What are your thoughts on the transgender swimmer competing in a women's competition? Do you think it was wrong of the organization to allow this to happen, considering the amount of public backlash? What's her name? Leah Thomas. I've not dug into that particular scenario very much. I hesitate to make any comment about that particular one, given my, I haven't had time to look into it. I've been traveling and everything. But we've talked about this a little bit before. I didn't really know what to make. I still don't know what to make of this because I think there's a lot we still haven't studied about this. I've talked about this before. There is a gentleman on Twitter. What is his name? He's a doctor from South Africa. He goes by Science of Sport on Twitter. Yes, Ross Tucker. Ross Tucker is his name. Ross Tucker has done a lot of work on this, and his evolution on this is he's a professor of science, I think in Cape Town, and has done a lot of advisory work for international sports governing bodies. We disagree probably a lot on anti-doping, but as it relates to this, I don't know who else to listen to, because this is one of those things. Remember, you guys asked me, like, what do you think about Jordan Peterson? And I was like, dude, I can't find anything on this guy that doesn't tell me he's either Jesus or Hitler. And it's like, I don't think either of those are probably accurate, so I don't know where to go to get like I literally don't know where to go to get someone who like doesn't hate him but doesn't love him, can give me some kind of in the middle of the road thing. And I kind of treated the transgender thing in sport for a long time that way, because so much of it on either side is just insanely motivated reasoning, right? You have the people who have turning into this moral panic. Apparently there were like 4 transgender kids in all of Montana, only one competing in sports in high school, and they wanted to have some giant fucking ban on this. And I understand the impetus for fair play, but it's hard for me to not see that society in America has been historically structured to discriminate against sexual minorities. We should be cognizant of that when we craft policy and think about situations like this. On the other hand, Ross Tucker strikes me as inherently, I won't say unbiased, we all have biases, but inherently probably left of the political spectrum on issues like this, where people should just be able to live their lives however they want. And his argument is, dude, like the data that we have shows that, I think especially for post-pubescent males to female transitions, that hormone therapy and the various interventions that are undertaken to make any kind of switch, they can make a difference, but they don't make up the difference between sort of what we understand to be the levels of comparison for, let's say high-level competition males and females within a relevant sport or competition set. It doesn't undo all the advantages. It just doesn't. And so the question then becomes, what the fuck are you supposed to do about this? Like, here's the other part I want people to think about. I believe Ross Tucker, and he has a whole podcast breaking down all of the studies about this. And I don't know, man. I am at the mercy of what I read and can find. The evidence seems very strong, very strong. But here's the thing. Like, people just want to say, well, then transgender people can't compete in women's sports. Okay, fine. I don't, at least for the time being, that seems like one of the more prudent calls. But that's not the end of the story. The story should be like, okay, well, what do we do about people who have these situations who want to compete? I think if you want to promote that you're getting this issue right, you want to come down on what the evidentiary weight says. And then if it does say that exclusion for the purpose of sporting integrity is necessary, that's not exclusion from sports. That's just exclusion from those divisions. The relevant solution seems to me to find a place for them to compete. And I couldn't possibly tell you what that answer might be. And I recognize there's a growing need to figure out these issues. But just saying, well, you can't compete. Right, you can't compete with them. But I don't think it's okay to say that they just can't compete ever. Well, maybe people say they should compete with the men. But if you're undergoing hormone therapy, that's not correct either. Because now you have taken, would you want to take the drugs that someone who is making a transition takes and then go compete in sports with other men? I certainly would not. I think that would be a significant disadvantage, but I understand that you can still retain a series of advantages thereafter. But there's also these other situations that we don't know a whole lot about, like what happens at transition at certain ages, for certain sports, at certain levels. We just don't really have a lot of information about this. So what I would say is there definitely needs to be a lot more studying that goes on about this, and there needs to be a lot more nimble crafting of policy around this, because just saying, well, you can't compete with women, even if I'm sympathetic to that, and I am, I just think that's what the evidence shows. Just saying, oh, well, you just have to live on the fringe of society now. We just don't have a place for you in sports. That seems, I don't think that's the best organizing principle to solve this problem either. We should try to the best of our ability, we should try to accommodate them. But I did see something. In fact, someone tagged Ross Tucker in the thread, and he just couldn't believe what he was reading. There was an argument that I saw that just seemed so fucking disingenuous. There was some lady, she had a PhD, and I don't know where she taught. She was arguing that women in sports does not need to be a protected class. Ross Tucker has argued extensively that it should be a protected class, right? Because if you don't have that as one, and women and men are free to compete with one another, yes, there might be the occasional woman who is able to break through and compete with men under certain conditions. But in general, you wouldn't understand. Women would not have participation in athletics in any kind of meaningful way, right? Not really. Again, at the junior levels where they're very, very young, I've seen wrestling where girls compete with men and when they're less than like 120 pounds, even less than that, like the 107s, 108s. I've seen that. Again, there can be moments where that the intersection is totally reasonable. But she was arguing, well, the reason why people argue that women should be a protected class is because when women were allowed to compete with men, and she gives a series of examples, that what it showed was that the men had to shut the door on them because they were getting shown up. It's like, I don't even know what world this person is living in. Yes, I am certain that I think one of them was archery, and in fact, years ago when I was in the Marine Corps, the number one shooter on the competition team in the Marine Corps was a woman. I can certainly imagine there could be scenarios where, I can absolutely buy that there was discrimination in sports, no doubt about it. That seems completely reasonable. But does she really want to live in the world that she was advocating, where we drop barriers for gender and it's just made the best person win, and this is a boon to women's athletics? That seems totally wrong. Totally wrong. That doesn't seem even remotely correct. Again, I can see certain smaller kind of, not saying that there's no athleticism involved, but one where there are many competing things, one of which is athleticism, that, like a table tennis or something in the Olympics, where I could see there being a case for dropping gender guidelines. Or whatever they may be. But we're just going to have soccer teams now, not men or women, or American football. And I know that some women make the team for in college for either kicking, special teams, other things. Great. If they're the best ones out there, that's cool. That's fine. I don't want to deny them any opportunity either. I don't think that's the solution. But what I'm saying is, if we just decide that women's sports as a category doesn't need to be a protected class, and that would meaningfully improve women's sports, I think is lunacy. Absolute lunacy. That doesn't sound right. I mean, anybody who watches sports would know right away that sounds fucking insane. I think it's a lot of people who don't watch sports thinking things about that world that are not true. I mean, think about any strength sports, Olympic weightlifting, swimming. Look at the differences in time. Running, differences in time. Obviously, in fist fight, can you imagine, dude, men versus women fights because they don't need to be a protected class? Can you imagine that? I mean, it's like, it boggles the mind that someone could think that. But that's just what I'm talking about. There is so much motivated reasoning. So my argument is, I think the best evidence that we have today, and he has a whole podcast on this. You know what I'll do? In the comments after, I'll find it and I'll link it. You should really listen to it. The best evidence tells us that for now, I understand why people don't want transgender folks who've transitioned from male to female to compete in women's sports. On the other hand, just saying fuck off, we have nothing for you, I think is not the kind of society I would like to live in.